Hello, I'm Sarah, and I am here today to tell you about everything that I knitted this year, 2025. I made 2 pairs of socks, 6 jumpers or cardigans or vests, 5 hats, 1 washcloth, and 1 shawl. So I'll be trying everything on if I still have it, if it wasn't a gift. I'm putting pictures in so that you can see everything. And I'm really excited to look through this retrospective of what I've been knitting all year. I'll start with the hats. I've got one of them to show you, and the other, well, this one's a gift, I just haven't given it yet, but they've all been gifts. So I'll be popping in pictures as I go. But this first one is the Tromso hat by Locatelli. It's just a regular 1x1 rib hat. I did mine in fingering weight using a 2.25mm needle. It took forever. And I used hedgehog fibers sock yarn in the color Method for this. The hat really, the design is all in the crown, which has this sort of folded, like wrapped gift shape. This is gonna be a gift for a baby. I haven't totally decided who for yet, but that is the plan. The other 4 hats that I made are all the same pattern. It's the Buness Tam by Mary J. Mucklestone, and I made the first one of these as a practice because part of my goal for this year was to knit a Fair Isle garment. So I thought I would just dip my toe back into the world of color work, Fair Isle, just, figuring out how different colors go together and how to plant, just all of that really fun stuff. And I wanted to make a bunch of hats just so that I could flex that muscle a little bit before I started on the garment. So I began with this first one, which I'll put a picture up on the screen. It's sort of moody, bluish greens with a little bit of orange and red in it. And I loved this one. I made this for myself. I love the shape of the tam. Really like the leaf motif. I think it's beautiful. These knit up so quickly. It's like a week of knitting for me, and it's gorgeous, fun, really engaging, not difficult, and exciting knitting. So I really love this pattern. You can tell because I made it 4 times. But and I was wearing this, it matched my Fair Isle vest that I made a few years ago perfectly. And then I wore it to visit my family. And my dad, who's very knitworthy, but what do you call someone who's so knitworthy they steal the knitwear of everyone around them? He put it on, and he was like, "Oh, this hat is so gorgeous." And I looked at him, and the hat looked so nice on him. I knew that it belonged to him in that moment. So I said, "You can have that hat," and he was really happy. He still sends me pictures at least every other week of him somewhere with whoever wearing the hat. He's wearing it all the time. So, and it's really wonderful on him. It looks really good. So I'm a little bit jealous because that was supposed to be my hat. I could make myself one, but I had sort of had enough of the pattern after knitting it 4 times. And it suits him really well, so I'm happy that he has it. So that's the first Buness Tam. The second one, well, I guess the next 2 are sort of together. I have a wonderful friend, Gayle, who I met during my master's program, and she lives in Minnesota. Well, she did. She moved recently. And through her, I've also become friends with her friend Brooke, and I went to visit them. And I was sleeping on their sofa, and they were being really nice hosts and taking me around everywhere, including to this really beautiful yarn shop in Minnesota. And this is actually where I saw this pattern for the first time because they had a sample. And Bailey and Brooke both really liked the hat, so I thought I'll make them each one of these hats. So over the next few days, I kind of subtly was quizzing them about what colors they like and that sort of thing, like dark or light, what sort of contrast level, what is the vibe. So I got the information, and the first hat I knit was for Brick, and it was purple. Plum and a cool tone purple. And that was sort of what I wanted to play with when I was doing this color palette, just combining different tones of the same color family in the same color project and seeing what that would look like. So it was this plummy purple, quite high contrast with like a peachy cream and light pink as the foreground color. And that came out really nicely. I really liked that hat. So I had another successful color story under my belt. And then I went on to knit the hat for Bailey. And she's more of a greens, but a darker. And this one, my inspiration was when you see pictures of bioluminescent like algae in a cave. So I picked dark brown, dark green, and then some really light green for this hat because I thought that would sort of evoke that mental image. And then for the contrast row, I just did black and white. So it's like, it really gives the impression of this like bright light in a very dark space. And I think that this color story is amazing. I love it. It really shines in direct sunlight, and it's much more subtle when it's when it's like dark outside. It was a little bit challenging to knit because some of it was really low contrast, but still it was a fun knit, and I really love the way that came out. So then I wrote up a letter and I sent it to them, and it was a surprise. It was really exciting when I was waiting for them to get the package. But yeah, I think they've been enjoying those, and it was really fun to knit for them. And knitting something for Bailey was on my 2025 to-do list. So another thing that I got to tick off the list. Then, a few weeks later, I received a call from my grandmother. She said, "Sarah, I saw your dad wearing a beautiful hat." And I asked him about it, and he said you had made it. "Do you think you can make me one?" And I said, "Of course I can make you one. Let's talk about color." So my grandmother lives in Florida for most of the year. She's blonde and quite pale, and she did not want a dark and moody color palette, which is my sort of main area of color that I love. And I never really even noticed that because I think I do use light colors. But she said, "Well, there is something in common with all of your color palettes, but I think we should try and stray away from that." She said she's a spring, like color season-wise. I don't really know that much about that, but we looked through all of my yarn and I showed her some different combinations, and it's really difficult to like get across what it's going to look like in the end. But so she picked like some favorite colors, and I really wanted to do for this have like a light pink be the background color, and then sort of play with like pink and green together and red, and have like that orange, pink, and red with a green idea. She didn't really see the vision initially, but she told me that she really liked a couple of the colors, and I promised that those would be prominent colors in the hat. And even though she didn't really like what I was telling her I thought would be best, she really liked everything else that I had done, so I felt pretty confident that she would like it when it was all knit up. And then on her birthday, she came to New York with my parents, and I went to New York and I gave her the hat, and she loved it. So I think I've been putting a picture up of it this whole time, but that was my 4th Buness 10. I love that pattern. I really enjoyed making it. I will definitely be making more in the future. I tend to just knit it on DPNs, and I find that pretty easy to do. And I love, since you're decreasing so rapidly at the crown, I love how fast that last part goes. It's really exciting, and blocking it is fun too. So those are my 4 hats that I've made, 5 hats that I made this year. Alright, I'll show you the washcloth just quickly because it's not very interesting. A few years ago, Purl Soho released, I think it's called a Home Life yarn. It's cotton, and it's got these little things coming out of the core. I bought 3 of them. I just thought it was an interesting yarn, and I started toying with the idea of knitting washcloths. They discontinued the yarn, and which is a shame because I think it's really cool. It would be really cool for stuffed animals. So I had made this washcloth last year. And then this year, I made this one. I don't know. It's almost not even worth talking about. It takes an hour or two. I have to wind this by hand because it doesn't really play well with the Swift. And I've still got 1 to go. So maybe I'll do that soon. I haven't used them, even though it's been years, because I haven't finished knitting all 3 of them. I think there's just like a free pattern on the Purl Soho website that you can still access even though the yarn is gone. And it's a shame that the yarn is gone because it's a really interesting novelty yarn. I've made 2 pairs of socks this year. I don't have either of them, but I'll put pictures in. I made the Riverbed socks by Locatelli. They're in the Lion of 52 Weeks of Socks book. I think it's a DK weight pattern, and I knitted these in Whistlebear sock yarn, which is a mohair, like 80% mohair, really high twist yarn. It's so interesting because the fibers are quite, they really want to be straight. So if you can imagine like a stitch, which is shaped like this, but these fibers are really pushing out. So everything gets wider and shorter. It's a gorgeous fuzzy yarn. And they're so warm. I haven't worn them a huge amount, so I can't really tell you, like, are they as durable as a normal sock yarn, or less, or more, but I can tell you that they're a pleasure to have on your feet. They're, like, really fuzzy and smooth, and quite thick, because it's like a DK-ish weight yarn. I enjoyed knitting the pattern as well. I think I've knit like 7 or 8 patterns from 52 Weeks of Socks, and I really like having this book of sock patterns. It's kind of fun. I knit those on DPNs as well. I like to knit a pair of socks on DPNs. I actually just like knitting on DPNs in general. I think it's quite rhythmic, and I enjoy it. The other pair of socks I made were a gift for my family friend John. He is just the nicest person. He's a friend of my parents, and my dad just got his green card, so my parents are spending half of the year in America for the next however many years you need to do to get citizenship. So I got to see John, who lives in New York, and he was just so excited and kind and supportive and interested in my knitting in a way that is kind of rare for people in real life to be. And I just left that lunch and I thought, I need to knit him something. This person is like the best. So I decided I would make him a really warm pair of socks. I used Patton's Croy. I really like that sock yarn. FX. I'll put a picture in if I have a picture of the finished socks. And I did the DRK Everyday Sock pattern, but I went down 2 sizes to the women's medium because I knit these on a 3mm needle because Patton's Croy is like a bit thicker than a regular fingering weight sock yarn, and they came out nice. I gave them to him last week and he was really happy. It was really sweet. So that was just a really good experience. I've never made a pair of DRK everyday socks for myself that have fit. All of the other pairs I thought were for myself, but they ended up being way too big. I think it's just because it has kind of a long gusset and it's toe up, so I just always underestimate how long the gusset is going to be, and then they end up too long and I give them to my dad. So I've never actually worn the DRK everyday socks, and for this pair I just knit the entire ball. Each sock was 1 ball because I thought it would be nice to have like a really long leg, and it took forever to knit the ribbed leg, but it was worth it in the end. because they made a really nice gift. Okay, now is for the big stuff. The stuff that you're probably here waiting to see, and that is the garments. The first thing I will tell you about is the one that I'm wearing. This is kind of a halfie because I had knit this cardigan up as part of a test knit last year, like 2024, but the test knit just didn't go well for me. It was really weirdly bunched at the back of the neck to the point where it was unwearable. I mean, if I was a person who had no clothes, it would be totally wearable. But as a knitter who has successfully knitted a lot of beautiful things, I'm not going to wear something that's like all weird and bunchy at the back. So I was kind of upset about that. I put it at the back of the closet. In February, end of January, early February, I thought, I love that purple yarn. I really want to make it work. So I unraveled this down to the yoke, and then I looked for a pattern that I could use to re-knit this. I wanted it to have a saddle shouldery element to it because the original pattern was a saddle shoulder pattern, and I sort of wanted to keep that through line. So I ended up doing the TULC cardigan by Ailbiona McLochlainn. I love her work as a designer. I kept the reverse stockinette detail on the front and the line. There's like a line on the back because I was only unraveling it to the yoke, so I would have had to unravel the whole thing if I was going to change that. And I reworked the pattern so that I could do it bottom up. It was kind of a big mental effort. I had like a big page of notes in my notebook where I calculated, because my gauge was also different from the pattern, calculated my gauge and the gauge of the pattern, and then decided what size I would need to make, see if I had enough yarn, and then I just went for it. It was very exciting, and I was really worried the whole time that it was going to be too small because I don't often knit like close-fitting garments like this, so I was just terrified that it would be too small because it looked tiny, and these front things were like really rolled up. I did end up knitting quite a deep ribbing, and neckline. I added some short rows into the neck because it was a little lower in the back than I had wanted it to be, but it came out so well. I wear this all the time. I love the color. I get a lot of compliments on it just in the street if I go get a coffee. It's knitted in Rowan kid silk mohair and Jamieson and Smith fingering weight, and it's a really nice yarn. It was the recommended yarn from the test knit. I did give feedback about the test knit, but none of it was taken into account. So maybe it was just me who had a bad experience with the original design. I think that the people who chose to knit it with more positive ease had a better time with the original, but I was well within the recommended amount of ease. So, and I was using the original yarn, so I don't think it's anything that I did wrong. But I love my reworked version of it. It's a little bit cropped. I have these vintage silver buttons that I got off of Etsy. When I first put them on the cardigan, they were kind of tarnished, but now I think because of the mohair, they're really shiny, and I love them. They've got a great weight to them. So this is just a very successful project. I want to make another TULC. Also in another like gorgeous statement color like this. The next thing I knit this year was the Doppio jumper by Seunghee. This is a really nicely just compound raglan, gorgeous, simple but well-designed basic. I had made a Yanni pullover in 2024 in two colors of Whistlebear Cheviot Marsh Aran, in a light blue and a dark blue with 2 rows, and I love that jumper. I wear it all the time. So I wanted to make another one basically the same, but with a less deep yoke and pink. And I had the yarn, the same yarn, Whistlebear, but I wasn't sure I had enough, so I added in another color, and I did blocks of stripes, 2 blocks of 2-row stripes. I love how this came out. the pattern was great. I knitted at a pretty different gauge than was in the pattern, and the only thing that I would change about this is that the sleeves have really ridden up over the past few months when I've been wearing it. That's something that's happened to me twice this year, and it had never happened before. So I don't really know about that. I've heard people talk about that. It wasn't something I ever had an issue with. But now all of a sudden it's happened to me twice. I think this pattern is really well designed, and I really enjoyed making it. So that was a win, and it was a pretty fast knit as well. I started it on Valentine's Day, and the yoke was finished 2 days later. The sleeves, of course, took me kind of a long time, but it was a little bit of an impulsive cast on, something that I did kind of a lot this year, and this was the time that the impulsive cast on turned out the best of the 3 times that I cast on something impulsively this year. This is what the Doppio jumper looks like on. I've moved and it's about a month later, but I thought that I would record this clip as I realized I didn't try it on in the original. It's got about 0 inches or centimeters of positive ease, but I don't think it has any negative ease either. It measures bang on 42 inches, which is about my bust measurement, and I really like this jumper. The only thing that I would say with it on is that of the 3 yarns that I used for this project, the darker pink, sort of purpley color, is a worsted weight, and the light pink is a DK, and the coral is a fingering weight held double. And I wish that I hadn't done the ribbing in the worsted weight because it flares a little bit. You can see it is sort of visibly thicker. This skein is also quite variegated, which actually kind of looks good with the stripes, but it does look a little bit less good in the collar. Not enough to make a difference functionally, but it is sort of, you can see that it's sort of the pooling lined up where all the light is at the front here. But I quite like the way that it looks at the end of the sleeves. This is another one where the sleeves turned out a little bit short. I wish that I had done another repeat for the sleeves. But all in all, I wanted a stripy jumper that I could easily wear under anything that wasn't too warm or too bulky, and it's perfect. I think the shaping is really nice. I love 2-row stripes. And yeah, that's about it. This is what it looks like on. This next project was one that was in the works for a really long time. I received the yarn for Hanukkah 2023, and I've been planning this since I remember 2022. So this has been in the works for a really long time, and then it took me like 8 months to knit. This is my Fisherman color block jumper, knit in Jameson and Smith, held double. I wanted it to be, I had this vision of this really heavily cabled, like almost gnarly, like tree bark fabric where you don't even see the cables because the color blocking is so intense, and that I think is achieved. I finished this in the end of March, mid-April of this year. It was such a mammoth endeavor. I started out following a couple of different patterns. Most of the cabling is from the Honeycomb Fisherman's Jumper by Gayle Bunn, which is a free pattern. But I added in this cable to the side, which kind of looks like a heart, and then I changed all of the numbers for the Raglan decreases. Originally it was based on a pattern out of the Moon and Turtle book, but I ended up having to deviate from that pretty quickly just because this is such a weird gauge because of the yarn and cable combination. So yeah, I finished this like 2 days before the weather got really hot. The only thing I'm not too sure about on this is the neckline. Maybe it should be like thicker. I don't know. It's hard to know because it's difficult when you've been working on a project for so long to put the needles down and call it finished. I do kind of feel like it might look better with a thicker neck, but I also know that part of me just wants to keep knitting on this forever. It's very long. It's the longest jumper I've ever made. I don't know if you can even see the bottom. It's basically as long as my dress, and it's really warm. It fits me well. I like it. I really like it, but it's not like an everyday wear sort of jumper. And I haven't really figured out when the best time to wear it is and like what the best outerwear is, the ideal weather, just because it's still fairly new to me. But this is a big success. I'm very proud of this. Okay, now from something that weighs a lot to something that weighs not very much. The next thing I knitted was the Look at My Holes Raglan by James M. Watts. And this jumper has a bit of a sad story, which I told in one of my videos. It's another one where the sleeves shortened up. I mean, it's actually not so bad. But isn't that interesting? It never happened to me before this year. I wonder what's different. This is knit in Swoon Fibers Marla Silk. It's a silk linen blend, 70-30 or 70% linen, 30% silk. I bought this yarn ages ago. It's a lace weight yarn, but I held it double. And I don't use a lot of plant fibers. I know it has silk in it, which isn't a plant fiber, but it does behave a little like a plant fiber. And I don't really enjoy knitting with it. It just doesn't have any give. And I found on this big lace, it was especially difficult to maintain my gauge with the primarily linen yarn. It really felt like a slog, especially the sleeves. I do very much enjoy the final garment though. A mesh top was on my list of things that I wanted to knit this year. I think that the black mesh top might be more functional, so I might actually do another one, maybe of a different one of the same designer's patterns. They have like more meshy mesh, so I might return to this idea again next year. But the sad thing that happened with this was in the same week that I finished this. I was knitting this for a long time. It didn't actually take that long to finish the body, but then I put it off when I got to the sleeves, and the sleeves themselves took me about 3 weeks to knit total, with like dedicated knitting time every day. It just like, I don't know, I've been struggling with knitting my sleeves this year. It just felt like it took forever, and I finished it and I was so happy, and I went to see Lorde in concert. I love her. And the concert was great. And I wasn't even thinking about it. Like, I was wearing this. I didn't change before I went to the concert. I just went in what I had been wearing that day. And in the subway crush on the way back, someone squeezed by me to try and get on the subway and snagged their backpack onto my jumper in the back of the arm. And I grabbed their backpack, tried to pull them back so I could unhook, because it was like quite a few strands that were attached. I managed to unhook all but one of the strands, because this is quite prone to snagging. And I had noticed that before, but I was like really hooked on this person's backpack. And someone behind me was deciding to be like vigilante justice Batman, and grabbed my shoulder and pulled me back, and they were like, let other people on the train. And I was just like trying to unhook myself, and I couldn't get it, and I ended up following this person all the way onto the train when they got too far away, and it snapped the strands that were still attached to their backpack. So, and also, I had like left my boyfriend in the lurch of the crowd. I am not the sort of person who shoves onto a crowded train. But yeah, the combination of being pulled back and trying to unhook meant that even though I got most of them, like I wasn't quite able to get the last couple of strands. and it was heartbreaking. I was standing on the subway, all jammed in, trying not to cry because I'd spent weeks knitting this jumper. And then one of the first times I wore it, it got not destroyed, but like pretty heavily damaged. Because it's not really the type of yarn that you can just weave the end in. And I haven't really assessed the damage yet. This is the first time I put it on. When I got home, I just folded it up, put it in a Ziploc bag, put it in the freezer so the moths couldn't get it with the leftover yarn I had from this project, just thinking I'll fix it at a later date when I'm not still so upset about it still. Which is probably, I guess I'll fix it today, because I have it out. I'm not so upset about it anymore. I don't know if I'm going to be able to fix it and have it not be visibly, like, snagged, because they pulled out so much of the thread, so I don't know. The damage, I think, is back here somewhere. I haven't even really looked yet, but yeah, that's the story. This pattern I found a little bit difficult to follow, to be honest, but once I was in the swing of it, it got easier. There's a recommendation to make a lace swatch, and even though I found the process of that quite confusing and annoying, I do think that that's a good recommendation, just because if you understand how the lace chart works, you're better able to sort of think on your feet when you're actually knitting, in case you're like one stitch too many or one stitch too few, because there's like technically 2 rows of plain knitting for each repeat, but they don't really feel like rows of plain knitting because you're like sort of resolving things that you've done in the previous rows, if that makes sense. I finished this with I-cords, which is good. I normally wear this over like a tank top, or maybe in the winter I'd wear it over a long sleeve or a turtleneck or something. Not this dress, but yeah, this one's kind of a mixed bag. It makes me feel things to see it, but I'll probably fix it today and then decide what I want to do with it. And all in all, I mean, it's a good project. I do really like the way that it looks, but it's got some baggage. This summer, I went on a trip to Shetland. I was so excited to go. My parents were going, and my boyfriend, and we were renting this cottage, and we were just going to see all of the sights. And I had decided that I wanted to knit myself a new Fair Isle garment to go to Shetland, even though we weren't going to Fair Isle, because it's kind of a hassle to get there. It's still, very close, very much part of the culture. And I ummed and ahhed about which pattern I wanted to do. I think I put it off for too long. I made all of those Fair Isle hats, sort of testing out different colorways, and eventually I decided I wanted to knit a cardigan. My heart always pulls me towards the greens and the russet oranges, that sort of colorway, but I'd already made a vest with those colors, so I wanted to do something different, and I thought I'll do more sort of plum orange, a little bit of blue, and I decided on the color work from the Orkney pattern by Wallen. It's a beautiful big chart, and I really liked that it didn't really seem to repeat. I pulled the errata chart off of the Ravelry page, which is just available. You don't have to buy the pattern for that. And I filled in the colors on Procreate with the colors of yarn that I had, trying a bunch of different color combinations. I can pop a few of them up on the screen, and then I knit up a swatch, and then I set out, ready to go. A little bit later than I probably should have. I decided I would do corrugated ribbing for the bottom, and yeah, so this is the vest that I made. I was finishing it off while I was in Shetland, like furiously knitting these last few repeats, furiously knitting these last few motifs on the ferry to Shetland, and it was really fun. I wish that I had done it sooner, but it was also like, I do enjoy having a little bit of that drive to finish a project. And the only downside is that it meant that I was doing the hardest part while I was in Shetland, preparing my steeks, reinforcing my steeks, cutting my steeks, knitting the button band and the armhole and the neckline, which that's not the most fun part of the project, but I was doing that when I was there. And I ended up with this vest. I decided that I wouldn't knit the sleeves, but eventually I will come back and knit the sleeves. And now I'm a little bit on the fence because I really enjoy having a button-up vest. But the option is open to me to knit sleeves on this if I want to. So I'll show you. I ended up doing completely different numbers and shaping from the Orkney pattern. I really only used the chart, and I didn't follow where each color was supposed to go in the chart either. I got these buttons from a shop on the main street in Lerwick in Shetland. I think they go perfectly. It's like a sort of shiny browny purple button, and I did the corrugated ribbing on the button band neckline, but not on the sleeves because that seemed a little bit excessive. And I bound off striping the bind off, which I'd never done before, but I really like the way that it looks. Really like the combination of colors that I have in this project, with this sort of dark purple and medium plum being the grounding colors, but then the orange and the blue, and then I have like each color of beige sort of is represented, like each of those 4 colorways goes from light to dark. So I have plum from light to dark, peach from light to dark, blue from light to dark, and like a gray beige from light to dark, going into brown, which seems like a ton of colors, and it is. But I don't think that it looks like there's like too many colors in this. I think it looks really nice. Some of the motifs that are my favorite, this big one in the middle, I really like this one. I love to look at this and look at all the colors next to each other, and I really enjoy it. It's such a fun knit. I want to be knitting stuff like this more. I did put a lot of time and energy into knitting this, but it's like fun and creative, and I think also not knitting sleeves meant that I didn't have to deal with any of the trauma of knitting sleeves yet. So that's this vest. The only thing is, I think if I was to knit another Farrell vest, I would want it to be actually more thoroughly shaped at the shoulder instead of coming over, or maybe knit flat for the top, because I think that the steek on the inside of the armhole is a little bit bulkier than I would want it to be. I'm really nitpicking here, but I'm allowed to nitpick because it's my own work. So that's the only thing. I don't find that the neck hole steek gets in the way at all, but the armhole steek, and it's not bigger than the others. I find the armhole steek is actually a little bit, I don't know, a little bulky. This purple color, which is dyed in the wool with like red and blue, it's called Blueberry, and it's gorgeous. And since I was knitting this, and like so in the throes of knitting this, when I went to the Jameson and Smith shop where they had like every color on the wall, I didn't even want to buy any yarn because I couldn't conceive of any other color palettes other than this, because I was so like in it when I was knitting, which is a little bit of a shame on one hand, but on the other hand, I have enough yarn. I didn't need to be buying another sweater quantity there, and I didn't buy another sweater quantity in that shop. So that was really fun. I wish that it had been done before I got to Shetland, but I did have a really good time finishing it while I was there. And I went to the textile museum and showed the people in the shop, because there's like a couple of expert knitters that go to the shop every day and you can ask them for advice. And I showed them my steeks and they were looking at it and they said that my colors were really nice and that was amazing. They showed me their knitting belt and they let me have a go on it. That was really fun. I did buy a cone from there of this like really nice brown yarn, which I'm hoping to make into something next year. Maybe I'll talk about it later in my plans for next year. But yeah, this is my vest. I'm really happy with it. I think it will get sleeved because the shaping of the arms is more conducive to a cardigan than it is to a vest, which is what I was trying to say when I was talking about the shaping of the sleeves. It's a lot more work to knit a cardigan, even if you steek it, because there's just like so much prep work and effort goes into doing this. So I wear it mostly buttoned up, and I really enjoy the way it looks, but is it worth the effort? Not sure, because it was a breeze knitting the other vest that I made that wasn't buttoned up. Okay, I talked about that one for a really long time. The next garment that I knit was also a spontaneous decision, except it sort of turned into a non-spontaneous decision because the yarn took like 3 weeks to arrive. I've been seeing everyone knitting with laying cloud, and I love stripes, so I was a bit jealous and excited and intrigued. So I bought 4 balls of this yarn, and the package got like shipped around America for 3 weeks. It was in Philadelphia, which is where I'm living, and then all of a sudden it was in Utah and Colorado and Cincinnati. And then eventually it arrived, but by the time it arrived, it didn't feel spontaneous anymore at all. So I had decided that I wanted to knit the Lakes or Great Lakes Pullover by Ozetta. I've made another one of these, and it fits so well. And I thought that the way that the color changing element of the laying cloud, like, I thought that would look really cool on the saddle, and it does. I was right. So that's the pattern that I followed. I made a couple of different swatches when the yarn arrived, and because people knit this on quite a loose gauge, like with a 6mm needle or even bigger, and I just did not like the swatches that were on that size. It felt like a gappy, like spongy fabric. So I ended up just making a bunch of swatches. Eventually, I really liked the one that I had made at 4mm, so I decided I would knit this pattern with 4mm needles. I chose to knit this flat, and my swatches were very small because I was mostly only making them for fabric type, and stupidly I didn't think to make them bigger. Well, it wasn't really stupidly because I didn't have that much yarn, but I should have been making bigger swatches because this came out much smaller than the pattern is written for. It's supposed to be a very oversized jumper, but I actually made like a slightly oversized jumper. But the pattern has a drop shoulder, so it needs to be quite oversized for that to work, and I did not have that much positive ease. So I ended up adding some short rows into the top of the shoulder. You can see, because there's stripes, that there's short rows for about 2/3 of the sleeve, and then I just knit the sleeve straight. I'll put this on. I knit this flat so that the stripe width would remain the same, and I was really careful when I was picking out what parts of the ball I would start each side of the neck short row shaping from so that it would match, and I think I did a really good job. I think they match really closely. I also had to do that for the part where I joined the sleeve to the saddle on each side, and I think that that went really well on both sides as well. I do like this jumper. I finished this most recently of all of my jumpers. It's a crop. It's like a high hip length. When I blocked this, the body grew significantly. So I knit the sleeves to a length, assuming that they would also grow, but then when I blocked the sleeves, they didn't grow at all. So I don't have more yarn, and I do have these 3/4 length sleeves, which are very annoying to me, but I'm just going to live with it. I think next time I block this, I'll give them another pull and see if they grow it all. But I roll my sleeves up most of the time anyway. And I'm not going to buy another ball of this yarn, have it shipped. What if it goes around America again? I just don't want to deal with it. I think if I come across this yarn in person, like in a yarn shop, I'll buy another ball and I'll add links to the sleeves. Or if like a friend or someone at Knit Night or something has a half of a ball of this, I'll see if I can buy it from them or trade or something. But I'm not going to go out and acquire more yarn to finish this sweater. It's been about a month since I recorded the majority of this video, but the doorbell rang and then I didn't have time to pick up the filming. So there's 2 more things I have to show you. One of them I actually hadn't even started when I was recording that video. So that was a very quick project at the end of the year. But I will first tell you about my MusiKAL, Stephen West MusiKAL. That was sort of the main project of the autumn for me that I finished. I really enjoy doing the MusiKAL. This will be very repetitive if you watch my videos, but I'll just be somewhat brief about it. I tend to at least attempt the MusiKAL every year. I love not knowing what's coming next and knitting along with people, and usually I modify heavily, but this year I promised myself I wouldn't do any major modifications for the shawl. But I did knit it with a single strand of mohair on a 4mm needle, so that does sort of change the look of it, and I ended up with this very beautiful, airy fabric. It's absolutely massive. I was actually really close to finishing this within the time frame of the knit along. I did 1 through 3, clues 1 through 3, all like week by week, which I've never been able to even close to keep up with that far before. And then the last border I finished in mid-November. I knit this to match a winter coat, which I actually can show you. I'll show you right now. One sec. This is my winter coat. I love it. I got it from Toast 2022. I think I've had this for 3 or 4 years, the very end of 2022, I think. It's wool, it's an A-line, and I wear it almost every day in the winter. And if you look up close at the fabric, there it is in the sun. I don't know if it's picking up, but it's got 4 colors, 4 or 5 colors. There's like a dark, almost blackened blue, 3 different colors of brown, a light tan, a medium, and then like a reddish brown. And then there's this bright green, which really gives the coat its color. But it's interesting that there's so many. I love the fabric of this. So I wanted to make myself a shawl that would match this coat. And I don't know if this actually really matches it that well. I think that those 2 medium browns are actually quite important to the color scheme. But I do think that they look great together. So I couldn't show this coat on the channel for a while because I left it at a wedding in November, and a friend had to go get it for me, and it took ages to get it back. But I have it back now, and I'm sitting here recording a video. So this is the shawl with the coat. I tend to wear the shawl if I'm out and about like this. Not too precious about it, but sometimes I do also wrap it around myself. Which I will do now, and tie it at the back. And I really like wearing it like that because unless there's a wind, it keeps me warm without being too warm. Oh, I have something in my eye. And I can wear it with like a camisole or a vest, and it's really nice, sort of a breathable heat. I wish that the other clues had been more blendy with the colors in the way that this first clue sort of blended the colors quite well together, because I think that these big blocks of color sort of work less well in the mohair than the really blendy parts. But these sections, like the brioche gradient and the woven panel and this section number 1, I think works so well in the mohair. And I would knit next year's MusiKAL in mohair as well. I've worn this quite a good amount, and I think it's just gorgeous. I saw another version of it this week at knit night. Someone had used, I think, like superwash merino, like is recommended in the pattern, and they'd done the garter border, and that one looked really cool as well, but so different from mine. So I hadn't seen another one of these in person until this week, and I love it. So yeah, this was a big knitting time investment for about 5 weeks. This was pretty much all I was knitting on, and I'm very happy with it. Here you can see it in the sun. It's got a beautiful halo. So that's my MusiKAL shawl. And finally, for finished objects of the year, is this Sophie shawl that I knit right when I moved. And I knit it in 5 days, which seems so fast to me. It's just a plain, simple Sophie shawl, knit in Plotulopi, held single, on a 4mm needle. I had been given a plate of Plotulopi by a friend over the summer, and I left it here, and I got back and I was so tired but awake because of the jet lag, and I really wanted something to knit with this gift yarn. I didn't want to mix the Plotulopi with anything in my stash because it's really rustic. It's much scratchier than the Nutidin that I have, and I just didn't think it would go well with it. And I didn't really want to mix it with anything that was spun. So I thought it needed to be a project in and of itself. And so, yeah, I made this. Oh, my cat is running around. I knit this in 5 days. You can see the stitch markers for my daily knitting. I enjoyed this pattern. This is the only petite knit pattern I've ever made. This scarf, however, is even a little bit too scratchy for me to wear. If I have my coat popped up, I can wear this over that, but it's a little bit too itchy to be directly on my neck. I haven't washed it, so maybe when I wash it, it will soften up a little bit, but it was a really fun knit. And, you know, I'm not too worried about this, whether I wear this a lot, because I just enjoyed making it so much, and I'm sure that there will be someone who I can give it to if I end up not wanting to wear it. It's a really gorgeous variegated gray, which isn't really a color that I knit with very often, or wear ever. Like, I never wear gray, not wherever. So that is my final project of the year. I hope that you've enjoyed seeing my projects. I have been editing the first half of the video, and it was fun for me to go back and see, and I'm glad that I'm finally going to be able to finish it off. I think I'm going to quickly go over what my goals were for last year, like the things I wanted to knit, and then talk about how that went and what my goals are for this coming year. So I'm going to put up on the screen, and I'm going to look on my iPad, my list of goals for last year. Just waiting for the siren to go by. Okay, my list of things I wanted to make in 2025 was split into 4 segments. Patterns, specific patterns that I wanted to make, functional things that I would like to own, gifts I wanted to give, and stash that I wanted to use. And I have completed 4 out of the 12 and started 7 out of the 12. So, okay, let's start with the patterns that I wanted to make. There were 4 things in this section. The Raven Capelet by Alice Starmore, a Fair Isle Garment, Striped Superwash Raglan by Ailbiona McLochlainn, and a Kaffee Facet in Tarja design. The only one of those that I did was the Fair Isle Garment. And it's sort of like, well, we talked about it earlier. It doesn't have sleeves yet, but I consider that to be a finished object because I've been wearing it loads. And I do think it will still get sleeves, but it's very wearable as a finished item at the moment. The other 3, I still want to make all of those. I don't have the yarn for the striped superwash Raglan here in Edinburgh with me, but I have it still in Philadelphia. So the next time I'm back in Philly, and I was planning on making this with scraps, because I have loads of superwash yarn that I bought towards the beginning of when I was learning to knit. Well, maybe not like the beginning, but in the first 4 years or so, I bought loads of superwash fingering weight yarn, sock yarn. So I'd really like to make that into a stripy Raglan still. So next time I'm in Philly, I think I'm gonna gather yarns for that project, because that's, I think, gonna be a really enjoyable knit. The Raven Capelet, still high on my list. I really want that. This past year, I've been really happy with the things that I've made, but I've found myself casting on quite a lot of impulsive projects, and some of those are great and really fun, but the projects that I'm the happiest with and the most excited about are the projects that I have been ideating and planning for a long time. So I would like to be doing more of that and less spontaneous casting on. The problem is they have quite a high barrier to entry for starting the project, because I need to have the right yarn, I need to swatch, there's techniques I have to become comfortable with. And for the Raven Capelet, I think I have to buy a kit in order to just get the pattern. I'm willing to do that, but I haven't really been at a point where I've had, like, I don't know. It made sense for me to wait until I moved back to the UK before doing that, because Alice Starmore is based in the UK. And I thought I would be doing that earlier in the year, but I actually moved like almost the end of December. So that I'm still planning on doing. Maybe I'll do that during the summer, and it'll be nice to have a smaller project. But yeah, I want to push my knitting like more whimsical and interesting, and sort of invest more time and energy into the artistic planning and thought behind the projects that I'm making, instead of just getting excited about a popular yarn, or I'm for stash busting, but I think that the projects that I'm stash busting with have to be, like, it has to actually work realistically. I don't want to knit a lot of something and then run out of yarn, or knit sort of a complicated pattern and realize that I haven't actually like made the right decisions because I was too much in a rush. Like for this jumper, it would have been better if I'd sort of sat down and thought about what yarn I was going to be doing all the ribbing in, because if I had thought about it, I probably would have known that I shouldn't do the ribbing in a yarn that's significantly thicker, because it'll make it flare. So yeah, going into future projects just with more planning and yeah, just being willing to take it more seriously. The pieces that I am spending so much of my hours, the hours of my life making, and I just want to keep that in mind as I'm knitting this year. Okay, next category, short is shorter. Functional items that I'd like to make, so because I want to own them. And there were two things in this section: a mesh top and a pair of felted slippers. I made the mesh top, although it ended in sadness. I kind of want to make another mesh top, but in like a darker color. I'm not really like a neutrals person, but if it was in like a black or a dark green or a dark blue or a brown, I think I would be able to wear it under stuff, like anything, and it would be really good. And I would like to knit it in wool so that it's not so snaggy and is also easier to work with the fiber. So even though I knit it, I'm adding it back into my list for 2026. The other thing on this category is a pair of felted slippers, which I didn't make last year, but I've actually already finished a pair of felted slippers in the year of 2026. I'm just gonna grab them so I can show you. Here they are. So these are not 2025 knits. They're like early 2026 knits, and I haven't felted them yet, but I used stash yarn for the yellow, not for the black. I had to buy it, but I used up like every drop of both yellow and black. And I tried out a really popular pattern. It was fun. So these were not completed, but they're on the list for 2026, and they're already ticked off of the list for 2026. So still on this list going forward is just another mesh top. So we have made progress, but only like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Okay, the third category, which is my most completed or my most attended to category, is gifts that I would like to make and give. And there's 4 things on this. A jumper for my dad. I have 2 dads. I made one of them a jumper last year. I think I made it in the spring and I gave it to him for his birthday in December. But I wanted to make my other dad a jumper. And this is one of those projects that I've put a lot of time into planning and swatching, and I've very slowly been working up. It's not finished. I've done 1.5 sleeves and 10 inches at the body. And I think the body needs to be like 16 inches. And then I'll need to do the yoke in the back. So this is underway, but not complete. So that was item 1. I wanted to knit something for my friend Bailey. She is one of the recipients of the Buness tam that I spoke about at the very beginning of this video. So that's done. Great. I wanted to knit a pair of socks for my friend John, and I did that. He received those quite recently, although I knit them over the summer, and he loved those. He sent me a thank you note that he wrote on a typewriter. That's so cool. So hopefully he'll still get a lot of use out of those, because it's still going to be cold for quite a while. So I did that. And I wanted to knit cuddly toys to give as a gift. I didn't do this last year. I still want to do it though. But it's almost the end of January as I'm recording this, and I have been knitting cuddly toy. I'll just give you a sneak peek. She's not actually going to be a gift, but it's a trial run for knitting one in child-friendly yarn that will be a gift. But here's a sneak peek. Oh, the sun. I just really love her. This is Aggie the sheep. It's a pattern by Cynthia Valet from the book Moosh and Friends. This is the second thing I've knitted out of this book. The first one was Hazel the squirrel. So I knit this year, and it's not a gift, it's for me. So I don't get to tick that item off the list, but I've sort of been working towards it. And now that I've made one, the vest, no joke, that's a serious piece of knitting. That took as long as everything else combined. Yeah, so now I can make, well, I'll make one for a child as a gift. I won't just keep making them and keeping them, but I will be keeping these 2, and they're best friends. So that's still on the list, but in a way it's been ticked off, if that makes sense. Okay, the last category is stash that I want to use up. And there were 2 items on this list. 1 out of 2 of my sweater quantities of Whistle Bear, which I haven't used, but I did bring it with me for the move. And I wanted to use up some of the yarn that my friend Bailey gave me from the farm that she grew up on. That is in a project right now. Also, I guess Aggie is made out of that yarn too. So Aggie the sheep is made out of the farm yarn that my friend gave me, but also I'm knitting the abstract pullover, and that I've done the body. This has been a project in the works forever. It was another impulsive cast on, and it's been like 9 months, I think. I'm gonna finish it as soon as I finish my dad's jumper, which is like my next thing on my list. Anyway, so that has been started but not complete. I think I want to add a few more things to the stash that I'd like to use up category. I want to use up all of the yarn that I brought here when I moved, because otherwise, what's the point in bringing it? So I brought the Whistle Bear sweater quantities, and I also brought some yarn from Loop that I bought from its Brooklyn tweed yarn that was on a really good discount before they closed down. And I don't really know the practicality, but my idea for that yarn is I have a range going from light to dark of purple, and I want to knit an intarsia jumper that looks kind of like a topographical map of Arthur's Seat or of Edinburgh. So I don't actually know if it's going to work out, but that's sort of the thing that's floating around in my mind at the moment. So that stash I want to use as well. I also really want to knit myself a colorwork nuded jumper. I have that yarn in stash. It's here. I've knit 2 of them as gifts, and I think that it's time that I made one for myself. So I'd really like to start looking into that. There's the Partner Pullover by Lydia Morrow that I'm thinking might be a really good option for that. 2 other patterns that I want to knit, which I guess I should have talked about earlier in the like specific patterns I want to make category. I want to make the Vare jumper by Gudrun Johnson using some yarn that I bought in Shetland this summer. I just love that pattern. I think it's beautiful, and I think that I would really enjoy wearing it. I want to just make the regular sleeves and the unstriped body with some green color work for the yoke. It's gonna be amazing. I'm really excited about that. And then the other pattern that I really want to make is the Medokvit, I think, a pullover by Teddy Lusak. It's got this really interesting sort of bib-shaped color work with a cable section in the middle, and then texture on the sides and on the arms. I just think that that's really beautiful and interesting, and I'd love to knit that pattern too. I'll put it on the screen. I'll try to put it on the screen. That's 5 specific patterns I want to make. Only 1 functional thing that I'd like to own. Only 2 gifts that I'm planning to give this year. The jumper for Dad already started, and cuddly toys. And I don't know, quite a few sweater quantities of yarn from my stash that I want to use up. And I'll also probably knit the MusiKAL, Stephen West's MusiKAL in October, because I really like doing that every year. Along with all of those goals, I would like to finish the whips that I have at the moment, which is the Abstracta Pullover by Ailbiona McLochlainn, jumper for my dad. I think those are my only 2 whips actually that I have with me. And the sleeves to my this is a Fair Isle vest, but I didn't make it this year. The sleeves to my Fair Isle vest. And I have another project, but I really feel like I'm rambling. This is fine. It's fine. It's fine to tell you about it. Okay. I really want to knit a replica of the Loewe Howell's Moving Castle calcifer scarf. I will put a picture in. It's a long fuzzy scarf that depicts Calcifer, the fire spirit from Howell's Moving Castle, and he's got his little eyes at the bottom, and it's got like all these flamey sort of gradients throughout the scarf. I have tons of orange, red, and yellow mohair, so I have all of the materials that I would need to make this, and I just would need to do some planning. This is one of those sort of artistic-y projects that would need some thought, but I really want to do that because I love that scarf, and that's yarn that I've had in stash for quite a long time, and it would be so cool. I can't imagine something better to do with that yarn. I just finished recording and I realized that there was another goal that I had for my knitting in 2026 that I forgot to mention, and that was that I wanted to keep doing these small, quick projects using yarn in my stash to make sort of practical and fun things. So the Sophie shawl that I did at the end of the year was one, and the slippers are one, and I've also been knitting a hat. So I would ideally like to do 10 of these. It's been really fun working through my stash with these quick projects. So yeah, I'd like to keep going with that, and I've already done 2 out of the 10. So that's one more goal on my list. I'm feeling really excited about my knitting right now. It's the weather for it. I'm wearing all of my knitwear. I didn't get to bring everything with me when I moved, but I'm hoping that as I sort of come back and forth a few times a year, I will be able to bring things if I want to. And yeah, it's just good. I don't have a sewing machine here, so I haven't been able to sew since I moved, and I miss it. I feel the absence of the sewing machine, but I just don't have space. So I will not be doing any more sewing until I have space to put a sewing machine. So I feel like all of my creative energy has really been poured into knitting recently, and it feels so good. Yeah, so I really hope that you've enjoyed this video. I've thoroughly enjoyed making it. It's been a little bit scrambled. It's hard to move. And I have some videos from before when I moved coming up, some videos that I've already put up since I moved, and yeah, it's just, I'm doing really well right now, and I'm really happy. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you liked seeing everything that I made in 2025 and what I'm planning on making in 2026. And yeah, happy knitting and goodbye.